Hello! Welcome to Free Will, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with David Joseph, Trick Slattery, George Ortega, and our first time guest, Monique. And Monique was talking to us about a few things before the podcast, some spirituality stuff and all that. So we were just getting to know her. So I'd like to start out this episode by asking Monique about something she said earlier about that you believe in destiny, but also free will. Maybe you can explain that.
Yes, Chandler, I do believe in destiny and free will. And when somebody believes in both, it could get them in trouble with either party. As far as destiny, well, I was born and raised Catholic. And, in school, it's funny because they say that we all have like a destiny, like God knows what we're going to do before we do it, or I mean, Jesus, like that was all part of the plan. But yet we have like the free will to go around and change it. And that I always thought was a dichotomy in itself. Now, as I've grown older, this is what I think. I do feel that there is a higher power where there is like a bit of a matrix, like there is part of a plan. There may be other dimensions that we don't know about. Well, we know about them, but we haven't really been in them, or maybe we have been in them and we just don't remember. But at the same time, I feel that we're given a free will because we're all intelligent beings. Some use their intellect more than others. Some unfortunately are disabled and they can't use their intellect very much at all. And interestingly enough, maybe those people have they're more inclined to be destined to be as they are than those who are more able to function. Maybe there's different degrees of free will. I'm doing this event, and is it okay if I just talk a little bit about the event because I feel that it ties in?
Sure.
Okay, so I am a part of a sketch team called the Wholesome Hecklers, and it's clean comedy, but it discusses like controversial subjects without being crass and whatnot. I founded this to make a difference. Yes, that's part of what I hope to be my free will, or maybe it's my destiny, or both. So one of the sketches is about Cosby's one of Cosby's attorneys. And I know that if I was an attorney, it would be very difficult, if at all, that I would be able to take on the role of his attorney. Now, he hasn't been proven, or maybe he has been something. I know he's up for a criminal case, but I don't know if it's been proven yet that he's guilty of the over 50 women that he is said to have assaulted or abused in some way. So the sketch it's funny and it talks about, but it's kind of like a dark comedy. It discusses how there's like the rape culture, the mentality and whatnot. And I wrote this and then I connect it with one of the Cosby survivors. Her name is Victoria Valentino, and we are going to have an event on April the 24th in Los Angeles for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We're doing this event, Victoria Valentino, myself, and my cast, the Wholesome Hecklers, and we're going to bring awareness to sexual assault. And so that leads me to talk about Cosby and what he, probably did. If there's 50 plus women saying that he drugged and then sexually assaulted them. He had like a free will, I would think, to decide if he wanted to do that or not. I mean, he had some sort of a kink in him. I know it was, it started back in the time where quaaludes were prevalent and people were actually like using them um to have fun, not just for rape, but to like have fun which I don't understand that, but that's what they say.
Hey,
But
Monique, before you continue on, we kind of are, are kind of interested in how you would define free will, or what you think free will means.
well, I think that free will means that you kind of like determine what is the right thing to do at the right time. I mean, our bodies don't have complete free will. Because they're doing what they're doing, the heart is beating and things are moving around and whatnot. But even so, we have a little bit of free will over our body with the nutrition that we take in. I'm a vegan slash raw vegan, somebody who may not be, or, even just eating junk food is going to put their body in more detriment, I would think.
Let,
Yeah, free will is just making choices, but I understand also that there's some choices that have already been made for us. Can we get out of those choices that have already been made for us? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't.
Well, Monique, here's how I'd like to respond to that.
Okay.
In a sense, as Trick Slattery would agree with, sure we make choices, but then again, those choices that we make are going to be a certain way based on the other choices that are already made for us.
Yes.
All the prior causes, like, obviously, if you had been born into a different country with a different language and a different religion, then your belief system now would be radically different than the way it did turn out.
Yeah.
That's the thing is that sure every day we make choices, but those are not, free choices. They may be according to our will or desire, but the will is not free at any given time to be different, to be, completely unconnected to the prior causes that made us who we are today.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I don't feel that we don't have any power whatsoever, and I don't think you believe that as well, correct?
Well, it's all about, sure, we can do things that influence other things, but in so doing, we ourselves were caused to do them. Like when we go vegan, for example, something caused us to do that. Whether it was because we learned that it was healthier not to eat animal products, or out of not wanting to harm those animals. So, those are two reasons someone might go vegan. The point is that a person is able to adapt and evolve based on new information.
Yes.
It's just not a choice that's made for like no reason whatsoever, independent of causes, because that wouldn't even be useful.
Well, of course, I agree with that.
so if we go back to Cosby, then could Bill Cosby have done otherwise than he did? Could he have done something different than the bad things that if we're saying he did those bad things,
Hmm.
could he have done something different based on if he had the same causal things that led up to him doing what he did?
I truly don't know. As you and I were talking about offline, if I was Cosby, every single atom of Cosby, even his soul, if I was Cosby's soul, would I be doing different choices? Well, you're telling me now I'm identical to him. My
Hmm.
soul is not Monique anymore. My soul is Cosby.
Right.
So I'm gathering like all the same choices would be made because I am identical. And so that's where I can see, as you're saying, there is no free will because now it's like this the same make. But then we were talking about, how there's rules and regulations of societies. So,
Hmm.
but even those rules and regulations were based upon possibly the destiny of our planet.
Correct.
And I want to go back to the vegan thing. It's interesting because there are a lot of people that I meet that go vegan just because they saw literature or they had pets or maybe they saw it on their plate and they were just thinking about it. There's something like tangible that made them go vegan. I want to say that that was not me. This happened in 2001, and I had nothing around me. I was living in a place that was very bare to the bones, to excuse the pun. I was up in New York, making it trying in my early days, trying to make it as like a performer, and I was in a very impoverished area. I had a little room that was practically the size of a closet. I didn't have any food around, and there were no animals. It was just me. And all of a sudden, I'm standing in my room thinking, uh, thinking to myself, like a cow's life spun around in my mind. I just thought of a cow. And then I thought, wow, like I'm a fragile creature, just like a cow eating other fragile creatures. And I thought of like a baby cow being plumped up just to be killed. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be horrible if they did that to like babies, human babies? It's the same thing. And at that moment, I'm getting the chills. And I think, by the way, that might be the angelic realm. At that moment, I became a vegetarian. So, what I'm trying to say is, like, why did that pop into my head? Just as you're saying, uh, was that free will? It was almost like I was something downloaded that into my brain. Why did I think about that at that moment?
Here's what's interesting about that is that you're left wondering, well, where did that thought come from? Where did this information, this communication come to me to reveal this to
Yes.
me? And so, in a sense, you're realizing that it came from an external source that wasn't you. It's like it came to you in a sense.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very
Absolutely.
interesting because I've never really heard that type of experience of someone telling why they went vegan. You know, because for me, it was from reading books and watching videos that enlightened me to the horrors that were actually going on to these animals, and that's what convinced me. But it sounds like you had a very different experience.
I truly did. And I want to just clarify that I became a vegetarian at that time. So I still was eating the eggs and the dairy because I didn't understand about, I mean, I was not downloaded the information that eating like animal products was also cruel as well. It was just the killing that I didn't like. I became vegan 5 years later because I thought, oh, well, animal products are dirty and they're like fatty. Let me try for a week. And then during that week, I saw synchronicity would had me see documentaries on the egg and dairy industry, and I saw how cows couldn't even get up from being overmilked and all the other cruel things that were going on, and that's when I became vegan. But let's go back to my downloaded experience of being a vegetarian. During that week, I had 6 mental telepathic experiences. One I will never forget. I was going with someone at the time for many years, actually, on and off, very rocky relationship. But anyway, I was asleep, kind of. It was like a morning dream. It was around 9:30 in the morning, and in my dream, I saw my finger on my cell phone dialing his number. I saw my finger touch every single digit of his phone number. And at the end of the last digit, my phone rang and it was him. I will never forget that. So, that's why I'm saying that uh as far as like being a Christian, you know, and Christianity and like other forces going on, I believe that they're interwoven. So let's get to this. I was downloaded the information that he was going to call me, or it was his thoughts that were coming to me. But how could his thoughts make me like actually see my finger dialing his number when it was the other way around? Any explanation, guys, or do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I'm just kind of stunned by such all the weirdness of this. But what do you guys think?
Well,
I,
I must
I,
go ahead,
Monique,
George.
I believe that there are realms of reality that we have very little understanding of, and so I believe what you're describing is valid. But then let's tie it to the free will thing, like
Okay.
what you say happened, right? But then did it happen according to your free will or according to your friend's free will?
No. No, absolutely not. I was dreaming.
Okay, all right, but
Eh,
so that's our point. In other words, like relating it to Cosby. So like so yeah, what he did was if he did it, it was clearly wrong, and we need to kind of like, in a certain sense, we need to punish him to kind of like teach him better right from wrong, and we also need to punish him to serve as a deterrent so other people don't do things like that. But now the problem with the free will belief is that when people believe in free will, they might believe that he deserves, let's say, twice or three times as much punishment as he needs to reform, or as we need to like deter other people. See, the belief in free will just like creates this hostility and wanting of revenge. So
yeah,
that's why we're doing the podcast, to make a kinder, more compassionate world. That yes, we need our rules and our laws, our rewards and our punishments, but to the extent we understand nobody has a free will, we do that with more compassion. We don't just like punish somebody like out of cruelty and out of this idea, yeah, you deserve this, so now you're going to suffer and all.
Right. I agree with George there. See, it really is about compassion and not being cruel, and by reducing the idea of seeking revenge because someone deserves it. And see, for me, for example, I was raised Christian, Protestant Christian, many different denominations while I was growing up. And see, for me, it all goes back to the idea of people being burned in hell forever, that sort of thing. Like, does anyone deserve that? And I came to the idea, well, that no one can really deserve it anyway, because their own existence, their life, who they become, what they do, is not really their choice. But aside from that, it also serves no purpose. And I think what George is talking about is, to the extent that there are rules and laws and legal systems, they serve a practical purpose to actually protect people from harmful things, as well as sometimes to reform people so they're not so harmful. So I think that's it. It's about being practical and compassionate rather than just, wanting others to suffer. And I think that you're a compassionate person, Monique, so you probably get that idea.
of course, of course. And we don't know what type of even family background Cosby had. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's out there, but yesterday I heard something on the news about someone killing an 80-year-old grandmother or something like that. And then they went on to say how someone on his behalf was pleading to give him a lesser sentence because he was sexually abused as a child. I have no idea how that came into, why he killed an 80-year-old, but I mean, absolutely, like the past has something to do with it. And what about the mentally ill? They don't know what they're doing. How about I know someone with schizophrenia? I mean, and I've seen it happen a few times, and that person doesn't know what's going on. So, yeah, yeah, but as far as like the law is concerned, you're right. We need the regulation so other people aren't hurt because unfortunately, people who have done crimes, a lot of times they've been hurt in life, but then they do it to somebody else, and then that's just spreading the hurt. And if that person doesn't get some sense of justice, I feel, then I think that's no good because then that person who's been hurt thinks, well, nobody cares, and then they can go on the dark side, if you would, and start doing things themselves or be deeply depressed or whatnot. So that's not compassionate either. I know that there's a lot of people in the spiritual community, not Christian per se, but spiritual community. Well, even Christian, they don't like court. They think court is not good, and I mean, in some aspects, they're right because it really has a way of taking the whirlwind out of the system. But I do feel that I do believe in justice. I do believe that you do have to have something. There needs to be some sort of consequence for your actions, even if it came from a sense of, well, you've been abused before. Because if you don't, then the cycle's just going to keep continuing. But at the same time, as you just said, reducing sentences, having more compassion, I think that that's very important because mostly everything is based upon how much love one did or didn't have. And I'm not even talking about physical love. I'm just talking about, feeling a part of something, feeling, the from, from a child and whatnot, because there's a lot of rich people out there and we think that they have a lot, but then we find out that they do yuck things. And a lot of times it's not just because they had money and because they got corrupt, it's because from the root cause, from the beginning. They didn't know how to handle it because they didn't have the compassion in their hearts in the beginning. Can compassion be learned? I'd like to put that out to you guys. I think it can, and maybe in some instances it can't, but I think mostly it can be. What do you think?
It all it all depends. Yeah, it depends. Like some psychopaths, they actually have a problem with their brain. It's shown in neuroscience that there's a certain part of the brain that's configured a certain way for certain psychopaths, or sociopaths and things like that. So a lot of it has to do with how their brain is configured. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of people can learn compassion and things like that. I think that's what happens when you grow up. Actually, when if you grow up and your parents are you grow up in a slaughterhouse, for example, you might not have compassion for animals because you're just so used to people just slaughtering animals, and it just becomes something, just a normal thing for you. Whereas someone that doesn't grow up in that environment has more compassion, and it's possible that person can be converted later on once they recognize certain other facts. But you know it it definitely is a learned thing, whether someone is compassionate or not.
It's interesting, though, with the slaughterhouse. An idea comes to mind. John Robbins, who was going to inherit all the Baskin Robbins ice cream places. Well, they didn't have a slaughterhouse, but they had, dairy farm. And basically, he saw all his family members getting heart attacks. Plus, I don't feel he thought that the cows were being treated well. I don't know that for sure. I think that was a secondary, but I think the health factor was it mainly. And he walked away from the business. I mean, he could have been a millionaire or however much money Baskin Robbins has, probably in the millions. I wouldn't say billions. Um, Now, how come, other people in his family didn't walk away? But he saw it. He walked away. That was pretty darn courageous. And he made a life on his own at age 17. And now he has books out, Diet for a New World. And now he has his own family and they go around talking about veganism and whatnot. So he was one of the people that broke out, I guess, being compassionate and or just putting his intellect in there as well. Whereas other people, they're part of the dairy system and they will always be a part of it, and that's it.
Yeah, well, Monique, way I like to say is, some people, they are more conformist than others are.
Yeah.
The way that they are brought up, the culture around them, they tend to think inside the box, you know what I mean? Whereas some people, they either have an extraordinary level of intelligence or they have life experiences that make them think outside of that box that they've been conditioned prior. And so, yes, people can and do change, and they do learn empathy and compassion, and that's a good thing. And so I like to explain to people that we're not saying that people can't change. In fact, we see it all the time. They're changing for either better or worse. We see people change. They change politics, they change religion, they change dietary habits, like people going vegan. Yeah, the good news is people can change. And so generally we're more about, helping people change. And Monique, here's one thing. The reason why I'm so, you can tell I'm very passionate about this whole free will topic. And part of the reason that might help clarify it is that to the extent that a person doesn't blame themselves for what they've done in the past, because we've all done awful things. Yeah, I realize that just because I used to eat meat and animal products, that I was contributing to the suffering of animals without knowing it. And to some extent, everyone is. harming the environment just because when you live in this culture you are, but realizing that it wasn't something that we chose all by ourselves, that helps us not feel so guilty and helps us focus, well, what can I do to improve? What can I do to cause less harm? What can I do to be more compassionate? That's what it's about for me. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, for some people, when they find out that we don't believe in free will, they think we're some kind of Calvinists who say that some are going to heaven or some go to hell, and that's not what we're talking about. Or they think that we're just some kind of fatalist saying, I just give up, don't do anything because it's all predetermined. Rather, we're predetermined to do what we do because we want to do it. Our very desires, which we didn't even choose, often lead some of us to do bad things, but often lead us to do good things. And sometimes people change for the much better. So I think that's the main thing. And yeah, I think it's great to talk about this and clarify it. And so, do you feel like you understand where we're at better?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. Um, but I guess I still feel like the inner conflict where the both are working hand in hand. The destiny and the free will just working hand in hand.
Well, I think there's an interesting way to fix this is to clarify really what you mean by free will, because see, like, if you think of free will as just being able to do what you want or just being able to adapt to your environment and do new things based on what's revealed to you, well then sure, we have that ability, but that's actually separate from the type of free will that the debate has been about, libertarian free will, and which has gone on to, that's like an ancient debate as to whether people can be deserving of hell and strange stuff, or whether they're the self-causer of their own thoughts and desires. So yeah, so in a sense, like, I guess all determinists, like I'm a determinist, believe in destiny to a certain extent, realizing that there is a way my life is going to play out. I just don't know what it is, and I know that large part of it will be me doing what I believe is right, what I think is the right thing to do, or doing things I like to do, like playing video games or talking on podcasts. So in a sense, a person can have a feeling that they're free because they're doing what they want, or they're doing what they feel is the ethical thing for them to do. So in that sense, that paradox can be resolved. But it sounds like you understand that what we do is caused by other events that we don't even understand or know about and can't control.
Absolutely. I've just thought of something else as we were talking about Christianity and how you were just saying that you want to do things better and whatnot. It's always been interesting to me that there are some sects of Christians that say it doesn't matter if you are a good person or you try to be the best person that you are. What matters is if you believe in Jesus, because um, if you think that you're doing all these good things because it's just you, you're wrong, and you know, God is helping you or whatnot, whatever, different things they say. But I know that you've heard the argument where it doesn't matter what you do, it's if you believe in Jesus where you go in the end. And
Yeah.
I find that that's very like sad and to tell people, because I want to work along in a godly sense. I just saw a butterfly that may be an angelic sign. Just putting that out there. Looking out the window. I would like to know that I'm trying to do good, not just for me and other people, but from a godly sense too. Like, yeah, I want to serve. Like, it feels good to do good. Yeah. But I mean, for somebody to say it doesn't matter, I have to like just believe that Jesus is, our savior. Well, I mean, I do believe in Jesus, but it doesn't feel good to me to hear that it like my actions, my like wants to be a good person and whatnot, my thoughts and whatnot that make me do these things, just like the event. I mean, I'm really proud of this event. I'm proud of the sketch that I wrote. I'm proud that I came up with an idea to have a limo with sexual assault awareness signage on the limo. I mean, who does that? That's a genius idea if I say so myself. I like that I came up with that. And somebody's going to tell me, well, it really doesn't matter unless I believe, that
Monique, let me give you a different spin on that. Let's
okay.
say you're going through any day, right? And you're doing whatever you want as an individual person, right? Just everything you do, it's what you want, right?
Mhm.
Now imagine yourself going through that same day, right? But everything you're doing, it's not because you want to do it, it's because God wants you to do it. It's like you're doing God's will, not your will. How would that feel?
That's better than what I hear. Like I'm saying, it seems like it's like a black and white thing where some Christians are saying it doesn't matter what you do. It's if you believe that Jesus is like the savior. That just to me that it should be in conjunction, like you just said. That's okay. Um,
Exactly. And I think that the Christians have this. I don't believe there is a hell. I believe they just like made that up to scare people. Because like how could an all good God, or how could, like, imagine even any of us who aren't all that good, I guess, and we try to be good. I don't think any of us would condemn anyone to eternal suffering. That whole thing is like,
yeah.
Yeah, see, and Monique, here's the deal. I get exactly what you're saying because from the Christian background I come from, that is what they were teaching. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how good or bad a person you are. It's just that you must believe that Jesus is the Messiah and that he died on the cross and rose again after 3 days. And like, you have to believe this correct doctrine. And if you believe one little thing wrong, you're going to burn forever. That's where I came from. And I find that to be very depressing.
I do too. I think that there's a better way for to to encourage us to believe than to state that it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you think. Yes, it does. It
Right,
does.
greatly matters what we do. And the thing is, like, another thing though is like some people, another way they just dismiss our actions is they're like, well, they think that whether you are rewarded or punished in an afterlife is based on what you do here. And so they just view it as a punishment and reward system. Like, I'm going to be nice and compassionate to other people for selfish reasons so I can be rewarded in my next life. And that sort of takes the goodness out of it, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree with you on that too. Of course, I want to go to a good place when I pass away, but I don't do good things because I just want to go to that good place. I do it because I want to feel good about myself. I also substitute teach, and I do that. It's flexible, and it's nice. Well, sometimes I'm just a security guard, but yeah. Well, I was talking to the kids about how I want everybody to feel good. They're all like loud and stuff, and we're talking about goals, and I'm like, you want to be nice. You want to make people feel happy because that like reflects on you, the energy. You want people to be healthy. You want people to be able to eat because even though you might not know the people in Africa or whatnot, the energy comes back to you. I mean, as you said in the beginning, I don't know if we were in the show or before the show, we're all interconnected. So, yeah, like, of course, I understand that people can get envious and jealous based upon how good people are doing comparatively to others. But really, if we all wish like the best for everybody and wanted people to excel in like their health or what their goals are, then we have a much happier world. And the happiness like makes, it's just, we're all interconnected, right? I
Well,
mean,
yeah, and Monique, here's the deal. Doing good for others often does bounce back and benefit us most of the time. There are certainly exceptions where we do good stuff that we're never rewarded for. But then again, it's always when the way I look at it is when I'm doing something good for someone else, I am doing it for myself anyway, because what's the difference between me and them? We're all the same. We're both life, we're both the universe. We're both, matter, energy, however you like to put it in whatever language. It's like that person is not more or less than me. It's like they are me in a sense. So it's sort of like, love your neighbor as yourself. Not that you're pretending that they're yourself, but they really are yourself. You're sort of the same substance.
Yeah, and I look at people more and more like that every day. I guess I look more, yeah, that they're made of the same substance. Yeah, I'm speechless because I have nothing more to say. You've extracted everything out of me.
Yeah, well, I had one more thing to say is, to the extent that we all become aware of how connected we are, we stop thinking of ourselves as individuals. And I think what's good about this, it all fits well together. Realizing that we're all connected means we're all part of, a big machine. Rather, we're not some weird freely choosing soul that's like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and screw everyone else. Basically, that we are aware that what we do is caused by others and what they do is caused by us. And it's rather viewing it all as one body so that everyone can live in harmony and happiness is the goal. And George can talk about happiness all day. I mean, seriously, he's the happiness dude.
Well, let's hear them.
Well,
Uh,
yes, Monique, that is why we're doing this. This belief in free will. It just like, for example, if one of your friends does something that you consider wrong or hurtful, right? And you believe in free will, you might become angry and you're going to direct your anger toward that person. And so they're going to feel bad. They might want to like kind of like, get you back and all. It just creates conflict. Whereas, like, if we abandon this illusion, this mistaken notion of free will, yeah, we might still be angry at God for making our friend do something that is wrong, that is hurtful, right? But I think God can handle our anger. I mean, like this, to the extent we overcome the belief in free will, we preserve our relationships with each other. Everything becomes so much more harmonious, and as everybody's getting along better, everybody's happier.
Yes.
It really all fits together, the happiness, but also the truth and the science of it. And of course, a person's religious beliefs or lack thereof, that's something that works out separately in their lives. Like, in my case, the goal of the podcast is to make people aware of, the psychology of why they do what they do, as well as what, morality or ethics and happiness is all about, and how can we live in peace and happiness and reduce violence. So that's the main goal, and that takes precedence over which religion somebody is affiliated with, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is the age-old question. Why would people that don't believe in or never been exposed to Jesus, why would they be punished to go to hell when they just didn't know? So,
Yeah, or perhaps even if they did hear about it, maybe they don't believe they have sufficient evidence to believe this, you know what I mean? And
right, as you were saying, they're like conformists. They're in the box. I mean, and please, I'm not saying that they're going to go. I'm not saying anybody's going to hell. I'm just saying that since that is out there, a Muslim that is in the box, like, oh, how about a woman? Like, some of them might not even know about freedom or want freedom because like they're just like used to it and they just live that life. I mean, I couldn't imagine being that type, person, but I'm sure that there are. So you mean to tell me that somebody that is living under a burqa that really doesn't even know the difference between like freedom and, has been told to believe in Allah or whatever, maybe has heard of Jesus, she's gonna like conform and that's gonna be her life.
well, yeah, and obviously the religion people are raised in There are some people who change worldview later in life, but the majority of them do stay. If they're raised in a certain sect of Hinduism, they're probably going to be that way for most of their life. And some people, they go to wars and they will even kill in the name of their religion, fully believing they're doing the right thing. And it seems bizarre that they would be punished for doing what they thought was right when they're just doing based on what they were taught. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Unfortunately, what's going on with ISIS? Yep.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that people think that the debate is about whether or not there's a God or who's the right God, which religion is correct, and that's not what it's about at all. That stuff is so much secondary to how can we live in happiness, because if we're all killing each other because we disagree, well then that makes it hell on earth, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how much more I can contribute on this conversation. I think we've solved the world and beyond world problems. I really appreciate you guys conversing with me and making me feel comfortable, pointing things out, but doing it in a compassionate way, and that we could all get along on this conversation. And I feel that people will learn a lot from this conversation. I hope they will.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. It's very great. Thanks for joining us, and if you like to in the future, you can join us again sometime.
I
Cause
absolutely would love to join you again. Absolutely. I've been wanting to. Just the time schedule's been conflicting, but any time that it's not going to, I want to be on your show. So thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And we actually I welcome, more balance and different perspectives because we don't want people to think that this show is all just about, a whole bunch of atheists and one acutheist, like George calls himself an acutheist, and it's really not so much about religion in general, although it ties into religion so well just because people like, well, God knows the future, but then they also believe in free will. And so, like, sometimes we'll talk about the implications of certain things for people's religions, and we can do that for whatever the religion is of guests that we happen to have on at the time.
I think so. Absolutely. I will say I don't know which of you are the atheists of the group, but
Uh, I'm a staunch atheist and skeptic. So all of the things you say like regarding the numbers and stuff like that,
Yeah,
I would
I
have
believe
I
in God.
yeah, George believes in God, I don't, and I think we would we'd have disagreements there, but I could still take our disagreements and say, well, even if given those, that I accept your worldview, then we could still talk about free will in that light. And I think that that's the point of this podcast is to say, okay, even given your worldview, I think we can we can address the topic of free will, and we can say that free will, at least the free will that we're talking about, doesn't really exist, even given say angels and things like that.
I I just wanted to say my idea of a true atheist, and I don't think that you are one actually. This is my idea of one. A person who feels that the lights go out at the end of one's life and that's it. That's it.
Yes.
Because is that what you believe?
Yeah, I don't think there's an afterlife. No.
Okay. All right, then fine. Then you are the true one because I feel well you although you said you were a skeptic, so if you're a skeptic, there is a little bit of leeway there. Therefore, I don't think you are a true atheist. Nope, sorry, you're not one.
Well, atheism is about your belief in God, so it doesn't really have to do with the belief in afterlife or anything like that. It's just whether you believe in God or.
Yeah, I agree with Trick. If you look up atheist in a dictionary, you'll find it's really, a person who doesn't believe that God exists, or sometimes they'll say that that there is no God. But as far as whether they believe in an afterlife or not, while I don't personally believe in an afterlife, I don't see any reason why an atheist couldn't still believe that there's a soul, or that they're reincarnated into a goat in the next life or something. Like, I mean, sure, they could believe that because the belief in a God is not always connected to the belief in an afterlife, even though for some people it is.
Okay, well, this is just going to open up another topic, so maybe you better save this for another time. But in response to that, if you feel that you're going to come back as a goat, and I don't think that people do come back as animals if it happens at all. I would tend to think that they would come back more as humans. In fact, I had a spirituality class on where we mentioned this. And do you feel that you just come back as as the goat, or if there's some sort of cycle, some sort of system, whether you want to call it godly or entity. There's don't you feel that within a system itself that something is going on, because something has to be controlling the system, just as you were saying, without there's no free will, because there's always reasons being built upon reasons and reasons and reasons. Don't you feel that even within a system that there's something that's playing it out?
Monique, I agree with you completely because I debate them. Basically, I say that the universe has to be conscious because our consciousness isn't ours. Again, we don't have a free will. So yeah, so basically, God and the universe are synonymous. And yeah, God or the universe, however you want to describe it, is controlling everything. So basically, to say that the universe, the laws of nature controls everything is pretty much the same thing as saying God controls everything.
Yeah,
That's
and from
yeah.
my perspective, me and George, we kind of clash on that one because I think that that causality, that just cause and effect throughout the universe can happen without consciousness. So I think causality led up to conscious creatures. Like we evolved. I believe in evolution, but I don't think prior to that evolution that any consciousness existed. Me and George, we kind of have our differences on that position. But so they're just two ways of viewing, two different worldviews basically.
Yeah, Monique, one more thing I'll tell you is as the co-hosts on here, we agree on the free will thing, but if as far as other subjects about religion and science and philosophy and politics, we're very different because we've all had majorly different life experiences. And so sometimes there'll be a heated debate, like between Trick Slattery and Michael Walsh debating about theories of time, like eternalism versus presentism, and it just gets way complicated.
I did read something, or I heard something a long time ago, where it's proven that the mind wants to have some sort of a spiritual belief or connection, if you will. I'm Googling to see if I could find it. This was a while back, maybe 10 years ago. Did any of you ever read that or know about that, that the mind actually wants to believe that? And if so, why do you feel the mind wants to believe it, beyond the fact that it wants to, we want to feel that we're going in a good place? Scientifically, why do you feel that?
I think there's a scientifically we could probably explain why people want to feel special. I guess so. I think there's a specialness attached to certain spiritual beliefs and things like that.
Well,
Something that you feel special. You feel like you
Trick,
know
no, it's
something.
it's way beyond that because you have to understand science has only been around for a couple of hundred years. Human beings have existed for 30,000 years, and then whoever came before has existed for several million. So the default mechanism for our brain hasn't been this rationality, this give me proof. It's been wow, lightning strikes. What is that about? And then thunder and rain and all. It's like everything is miraculous. Everything is quote unquote spiritual because again that was our conditioning through evolution for
Yeah, and that
millennia.
that has to do with just humans filling in the gaps basically. So we should close it out, but and then perhaps speak with Monique a little more offline a little bit. But
Yeah, yeah, maybe so, because that was a kind of a separate topic. Okay, so we'll end this podcast, but then we might still talk to her after the show's done. Okay, You've been listening to Free Will, Science, and Religion with Chandler Klebs, David Joseph, Trix Slattery, George Ortega, and first time guest Monique. And we had a very interesting conversation about many different topics, and then we were sort of getting off onto afterlife stuff. So that may need to be saved for a future episode. But thank you for listening, and goodbye.